Recorded live at the center of the Earth. This is Robots from Tomorrow.
Hello everybody, welcome to Robots of Tomorrow. My name is Greg. Thanks for joining me. This is our first show back from the winter break, and I wanted to talk a little bit about the plan for 2024, including a new series debuting next week. But to do that, I need to ask for your indulgence as I wind the clock back a little bit. Robots, for the last 2 years or so, has been an interview-only show, and that's been great. I love doing them. I love getting the chance to talk with creative folks about what they do and how they do it in their particular way. 2024 already has a couple of interviews on the books that I'm really excited about, so that part of the show isn't going anywhere. That said, I've come to realize there's been something missing from the show since we went interview only. And I know you know what I'm talking about if you have any familiarity with the show from, the before times. What's missing is my co-host, the other robot, Mike Romeo. One episode he's here, the next, poof. Now, he'd been out for periods before that, but nothing like this. So, what happened? I can tell you this much. We didn't have a falling out. There wasn't any creative differences drama, and he did not storm out in a huff. In late 2021, he let me know he wanted to step away from things for a bit to, recharge the batteries. And that when he came back, he'd like to do the show at a more humane pace, which I completely agreed with. We didn't really talk about him returning on a specific date because things are pretty relaxed here at the underground recording studio, so we didn't really feel a need to nail it down to him coming back on a particular date. So he left, and then I carried on with the interviews in the meantime. And then time passed. He came back for the Kindle or Kindling episode, which went great. More time passed, and life has just kept getting in the way. The truth is that right now, as I'm recording this, I have no idea when Mike is coming back, or even if he's coming back. Robots has always been the two of us. Even when a particular episode had only him or me on it, I still felt the show was a joint venture or expression of ours. But I guess the question I've been asking myself the last year or so, and something you, the audience, have probably asked and answered for yourselves already, is how long is the show still ours if it's just me in the chair? And if it really is just me, shouldn't I just end the show and do something else? Because I almost did. Episode 800 was almost the last one. I was going to sunset Robots, keeping the archive up and available, obviously, and then start up something else in a similar vein with less baggage. Now, what kept that from happening? I came to realize that what I thought was baggage was really just history, just backstory. I mean, was I not going to acknowledge Robots at all on whatever new gig I did? Of course I was. Was I embarrassed by Robots? Of course not, just the opposite. So why was I trying to distance myself from it? I wasn't articulating this to myself at the time, but looking back, I guess I thought if I did my own show and it sucked, then it sucked. No big deal. But if I did Robots as quote-unquote my show and it sucked, then that was a million times worse. I didn't want to be the guy who tried to keep the party going too long. I guess I was afraid I didn't have what it took to keep this particular party jumping the way we had come to expect that it could. Maybe it was better to just call it a night for this party and throw another one tomorrow. Well, the fact you're listening to this episode gives you my answer. Robots is continuing, even if there's just one robot left. And no, I'm not changing the name of the show to Robot from Tomorrow. If the plural robots title still bothers you grammatically, think of it as referring to me and the fleet of mechanical helpers I have with me manning the machines down here at the center of the Earth like Superman's Kryptonian androids at the Fortress of Solitude. So, the show is continuing, the interviews are continuing, but what about the missing Mike of it all? Well, we built Robots to talk about whatever comics we wanted, whenever we wanted. More power to my podcasting brothers and sisters putting out work on a single topic. But that was not a formula for success for free-range wandering spirits such as Mike and I. A big part of the fun of doing the show was we were never sure what we were going to talk about next. Back when our book club episodes were on the regular, we tried to have the next one be as far as we could get from the previous one genre-wise. What hadn't we read yet? And sure, we did have our favorites, but we did try to offset those perennials with new, or at least new to either of us, works. But without Mike, I kind of lost my enabler for branching out my reading choices. So since then, I've primarily lined them up with the show's interview subjects, but that doesn't really give me the chance to wax on about this, that, or the other thing like he and I did when we were by ourselves. Because, why invite somebody in to chat only to make them listen to you ramble on and on? Listeners want to hear the guests ramble on and on. That's why they're there. So it's in the spirit of giving myself somewhere to ramble safely that I've come up with the Someday Project. Because we all have that list, right? The one with all the books we're going to read or reread when we finally get time on that most mythical of days, someday. Well, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, the purpose of the Someday Project is to not only start crossing stuff off my list for a change, but to share some of the thoughts and feelings the stuff I read inspire in me with you. The basic Someday rules are: material should be, with a few exceptions, from between 1977 and 1992. Reading starts with 1977 and goes forward in rough chronological order. Episodes are scripted to be no more than 15 minutes in length, hopefully less. So when it comes to what I'll be talking about more specifically, I'm sure you're thinking, what comics from 77 to 92 is he going to talk about? To which my answer is, well, all of them. Yeah, I'm kidding. No. What I am going to be doing is looking at the comics released during that 15-year period and trying my best to basically read now what I would have read back then if back then I were the type of fan I am now. In the words of Multiversity podcasting brother Paul Lai, I'm going back in time to, quote, read widely and dig deep, unquote. Well, to be honest, maybe not quite as deep or wide as Paul, because I don't need that kind of pressure, but you get the idea. And definitely check out Paul's show, Comic Syllabus, in the Multiversity Archives to see just how high of a bar he sets for that kind of thing. Why start in 1977? A few reasons. Number one, a surprising number of titles I wanted to read from the beginning started coming out in 77, or close enough for these purposes. You got 2000 AD, Heavy Metal, Comics Journal. Number two, going a little broader, 1977 gives us a comics industry really pivoting from the old newsstand distribution model to the local comic shop / direct market model. This turn gives rise to independent publishers like Fantagraphics, First, Eclipse, Pacific, and more, all aiming for a slice of this new marketplace for their boundary-pushing content that couldn't survive on newsstands of old. Number three, well, I was born in 77, so why not start there? The fact I started reading comics pretty early on means hopefully I won't be too far into the Someday Project before books from the hazy days of my youth start popping up. And when I say rough chronological order, I do mean rough. There was a split second, a real sliver of a split second, where I actually considered going week by week on every available book from January 77 forward, but thankfully quickly came to my senses. Holy shit, that would have been a disaster. So right now, my method seems to be looking at each year's worth of books, picking out the ones I want to read, grouping them in ways that give me enough stuff to talk about in an episode, and then moving on. So, as I glance over to the office whiteboard and looking what's in the 1977 column already, I may or may not be reviewing such topics as Jack Kirby's Captain America run, the start of 2000 AD, Mike Friedrich's Star Reach, the start of Heavy Metal, Gene Colan's work on Howard the Duck and Tomb of Dracula, Steve Ditko's Shade the Changing Man, and a few others. Actually, this is probably a good time to also say that this doesn't mean I'm going to stop talking about comics from the 21st century. I've got plans to talk about Al Ewing's Marvel work, Jason Aaron's Thor, the animated Bat books, and more DC AU content that I'm not quite ready to unveil yet, but should be super fun to get to. So, on Monday is the first Someday episode. There's no way that name choice isn't going to get confusing ever, but I'm sticking with it because obviously I like it. And then the following week's Thursday, February 15th, has the first of 3 episodes covering the best Superman stories of the Bronze Age with friend of the show Vince Ostrowski from the DC3 cast. Now, I realize a Bronze Age discussion topic kind of undercuts the whole I'm not turning into an all old comics all the time cloud yelling guy statement I made not 30 seconds earlier. But when I get a chance to talk about a topic with someone who knows it like Vince knows that topic, man, I'm going to take it. Plus, they're a fun listen. We actually recorded these quite a while back. He's already mentioned them a few times on the DC3 cast, so I'm really pumped to finally get these off the hard drive and out into the world. So that's the plan for at least the first half of 2024. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll be back next week to talk about one of the formative comics publications of my youth, Dragon Magazine. Huh? Don't worry, it'll all make sense Monday. So stay safe, enjoy those funny books, and I'll catch you next time.